Hey folks, before we begin today's show, I want to thank our awesome sponsors. The first is IDLE Academy. IDLE is the first and only authorized vocational school for instructional design and online learning. It includes a comprehensive hands-on curriculum with certifications, credentials, expert coaches, mentors, a community of practice, paid experience opportunities, industry-preferred software access, live events, and ongoing updates. Your entire instructional design career is neatly packaged behind a single login. Check out all the details at www.idlecourses.com/academy, and you can use my code Luke for $88 off the yearly membership. Also, question for you, by the way. Do you want to learn about instructional design with me and other learning nerds? I'm happy to say that the 5th cohort for Instructional Design Institute is now accepting applications. Come nerd out with us inside of our Instructional Design Fundamentals course. You'll learn about how learning works, backward design, learning strategies, universal design for learning, AI, creating portfolios, and much more. You'll also be getting my feedback and guidance along the way as you create your own learning experience inside of Brightspace. Each week, we have live webinars to break down topics and to collaborate together. And our students come from all sectors, by the way: higher education, K-12, corporate America, freelance, and even the government. So hey, apply today to be a part of the next cohort starting on Monday, July 15th. And I can't wait to see you there. Okay, let's bring on the introduction music and let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on into the nerdiest podcast you are going to hear today. My name is Luke. I am a senior instructional designer, program manager, author, blogger, podcaster, YouTuber, and overall, I am your learning nerd, here to be able to help you out along your own instructional design journey. And I will welcome on into the show anyone who wants to learn more about how to design learning experiences, how to teach, and thinking a little bit more about how exactly does learning work. That's what this show is all about. And you can find all of the information that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. Folks, as you have seen now from this title, we have hit a massive milestone. 100 episodes officially in the books. And when I started this, all I kept on hearing about was, "You are crazy. What are you thinking? No one is going to listen to an instructional design podcast." All things that absolutely no one really said to me. If anything, I think I said this to myself, because educational podcasts are typically, well, they're kind of boring. So the entire idea around this show was, what if I did the opposite and really let the passion shine through for how much I love designing learning experiences? Well, 100 episodes later, and I think it's safe to say we did it. It's a pretty surreal feeling. I'm still feeling shocked at how many of you listen to this show, by the way, and just how many of you have stuck around from day one. And if I'm being honest, being a podcaster wasn't a part of the plan. Even if I'm being truly honest, I didn't have a plan at all for this kind of journey. I have a bit of a, how you say, obsessive personality. And if I find something that I really enjoy, I tend to go all in. And podcasting fell into this bucket. I loved listening to podcasts about fantasy football, business, leadership, entrepreneurship, and self-help. But the thing I never listened to as an academic and an instructional designer were podcasts about instructional design. It's way too niche, I thought, and no one would give an instructional design podcast a chance. But this was what I was passionate about and wanted to share with others, and like folks like yourself. What still surprises me to this day is that folks actually listen to this show. So there was kind of like a pivotal moments when looking at my inbox and the download numbers to say, wait a second, I think I actually have something here. Could this turn into a real podcast to help people with their instructional design needs? But I'm getting ahead of myself. How on earth did we get here? 100 episodes about hardcore learning nerd content. So humor me. Let's go back in time and let's explore how we got here. Most of you know that I love health and fitness. You may have also seen some LinkedIn posts lately tagging my buds in the Sturdy and Nerdy group. In about 9 months, I lost about 30 pounds of fat and ended up competing in a few natural bodybuilding shows. With my obsessive personality, exercising and meal prep was all that I could think about. My friends and family noticed the results, and before I knew it, I was helping people with their fitness goals. I wanted to share with them resources that could help them, but I found that most information online about nutrition and training was a bit confusing. I also had a different mindset with my results because I focused on behavioral change, something that a lot of people typically don't do within the health and fitness space. And I acknowledged that if I was going to do this type of a transformation for the long run to be able to get those types of real, tangible results, I needed a slow and steady pace. There was going to be nothing of the sort of a 30, 60, 90-day transformation spectacular for this guy. I wanted a permanent change and not a quick fix. To do this, I took a good hard look on my past failures and what I learned along the way. What worked well for me? What was a distraction? What could I have done differently the next time around if I had to overcome these challenges again? It was probably the first time ever that I examined my own behaviors and crafted a plan individualized for my own needs. And surprise, surprise, it actually worked. To spread this message of folks and to share how to replicate my steps, I turned to starting a podcast back in 2018. And I launched this podcast that was called the Iron University Podcast. I have no idea if that information online still exists anywhere. I shut down a lot of the stuff because it's been years ago, but maybe it still does. I don't know. But it was essentially a fitness podcast that prioritized learning over anything else. And even though listening to these episodes now, I found some a couple years back, I'm not sure if they're still around like I just said, but oh man, this feeling of a deep cringe of hearing myself and being like, that does not sound like me anymore. But what this helped me to be able to do from this podcasting journey was that it built a foundation for me on just how to actually host a podcast. I learned about how to edit, how to add in introduction music, how to write a script, how to interview people, and trying to just find an identity in an incredibly oversaturated market like a health and fitness space. To my surprise, people listened. Conversations at work began to revolve around the podcast. It wasn't just like, hi, how are you doing anymore? It was, hey, Luke, how's the podcast going? So family over the holidays, they would ask me about the podcast and they would mention about their favorite episodes. Seeing friends, same thing. Every conversation I had was just talking about podcasting. And it was weird. It was very cool, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it was weird. It was different. The podcast eventually fizzled out because I didn't have the same level of enthusiasm anymore for making fitness content. It just kind of went away. But instead, I developed a new passion, instructional design. At this time, I had just started MIT. We were creating a new online leadership program designed specifically for engineers, scientists, and researchers. And for this program, senior level leadership wanted to pull out all the stops and truly make this program the best that it could be. We were conducting a pilot program, and after hosting a few focus groups with these learners, I realized that there was an opportunity to create a podcast for these folks. No one else on my team knew how to start a podcast, but everyone agreed that it was a good idea. So I volunteered, and all of a sudden, I found myself hosting a short podcast series for MIT. My health and fitness podcast was a bit wild. It didn't have as much rhyme or reason for things. It kind of was like motivational with music, and the scheduling didn't make sense. They were all over the place. Some were 10 minutes long. Some were like an hour and a half long episodes. Really, I wasn't too sure exactly what I was doing here. So I knew that if I was going to be creating a podcast for MIT and representing this brand, it better be professional. It better be well done. I had no idea if people are going to like the style that I was trying to be able to do, which was essentially narration and adding in industry experts' opinions and essentially layering them together where I talk as the narrator and then the industry expert brings in a personal story to back up what I was just saying and repeat, repeat, repeat. But when it was done, I put it out there, we put it inside of the courses, and we waited essentially for the results. And one of my team members noticed that in the discussion board, the learners were talking about the podcast, and they were actually asking about when the next podcast episodes were coming out because they were looking forward to listening to them. That push of positive feedback was what I needed to say that maybe I should do more with podcasting. And that, my friends, is how I took a chance with my own podcast about learning and instructional design. This podcast started off with a bit of a bumpy ride, I'll say. I decided for the first 5 episodes that I was going to batch record them. Every podcaster who said that if they were going back in time and starting out again, they would do this. They would record 5 episodes at first and then release them in either a all-at-once series or one at a time to give themselves a bit of runway before releasing next episodes. So that's what I did. I recorded 5 episodes in one day, and then I was editing the episodes, and going through that editing process, I realized that I hated them. I despised how I sounded. Plain and simply put, it was not me. It wasn't authentic in any way. It just didn't sound like me. So I burned everything down. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start completely from scratch, deleted everything, and I gave it a second try. The second time around was much better, even though I still hate how they sound, but that became the first 5 episodes, was that type of a second try at batch recording. And a part of these different types of episodes, one of them was actually an interview that I was doing. And the first interview that I was able to do, it was an extremely noisy day outside. There was a ton of construction happening across the street from me, and I was picking up the sounds of like trucks backing up with that loud beeping into the microphone, and was like, what am I going to do? So I decided to go into my bedroom closet. I surrounded myself with a ton of clothes and winter jackets, and that kind of became like my recording studio for a long time, by the way. I recorded a lot of episodes inside of that studio. And this first interview that I was doing was with 2 authors who I deeply respected. They were the ones who wrote the book UDL in the Cloud. It was the first book that I ever read about pertaining to instructional design. And oh man, I was nervous. I was extremely nervous to begin with to interview 2 people who I looked up to. And oh yeah, by the way, on top of that, they are building a brand new street across the street from me. So I had no idea how this was going to go. But after a couple of minutes of a conversation and speaking with Tom Thibodeau and with Dr. Katie Novak, I realized how much I enjoyed it, and actually just talking with other people about learning experiences, and I realized that I could definitely get behind this. After that episode came out, something different happened compared to the other podcasts. People I didn't know at all began to reach out. At first, I was like, oh, great. This is some kind of spam stuff, and LinkedIn is just exploding, and now I have this new email inbox that's going to be filled with garbage, and they're going to want to make me try to become a reseller for something, or I had no idea what was going to happen from that type of a spamming perspective, if you will. But no, the people who were reaching out were folks who genuinely I had never met before, but they actually enjoyed the show. And I didn't know what to do with this information. That took a bit to process, to say, oh, this is what it's like to actually have a podcast that people just enjoy listening to. And this is what has led me to today's podcast topic, folks, was what I have learned after 100 episodes. Still insane to say that. But I learned about the biggest thing. Here's my biggest takeaway for you. I learned about the value of relationships, the value of connections. And I don't think it's a coincidence, by the way, that this podcast began to take off during the pandemic. You, the audience, you wanted to learn more about instructional design, and I happened to be at the right place at the right time to share about my instructional design journey and to bring on guests who knew a thing or two about a thing or two with designing learning experiences. And by listening to your feedback on what you were looking for, this allowed me to craft better products and services to help serve you. The book is definitely what comes to mind, along with the first rendition of Instructional Design Institute years ago when I gave that a shot with the whole membership idea, and now it's morphed into something completely new and different. But this all became because of your feedback. While you were helping me by simply listening to the show, you also helped me in a tremendous way of figuring out coping during the pandemic. As you can probably guess, I am a people person. I love conversations. I love meeting new people. When that basically became impossible to do for an in-person event, those are now gone, I doubled down, tripled down on connecting with other people online. And LinkedIn became that spot for the learning nerds to gather, and it transformed how I thought about connecting with an audience. So many of these interactions led to new opportunities, and it gave me the platform to be able to reach even more folks. And even though I have fond memories of speaking at opportunities and such, and I've been able to do many, which I am very thankful for, I do have a favorite moment of connecting with all of you. And this moment is with my birthday. So every year on my birthday, I host a book giveaway contest, and the rules are simple. In order to be eligible to win a signed copy of my book, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer, what the rules are for this contest is that you need to tag a friend or a colleague and simply say something nice to them. It's a small way to make someone's day. And hey, if this just happens to be on my birthday, then everyone can enjoy this type of day and just really make it be like a special type of a day. Now, what was so special was that so many of you reached out to simply say happy birthday, of course, and instead of saying something nice to someone else, you would just say something nice to me, which was incredibly kind. Not the point of that post. I wanted you to be able to share kindness with other people, but nonetheless, I still deeply appreciate it. And so many messages kept on coming about that, like I couldn't even turn I had to turn my notifications off on my phone for a bit because my phone was just pinging literally every second with another message, another email. Some of you sent me videos of you singing happy birthday, playing instruments. Like it was just such a surreal feeling the first time this happened. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this, but I do know how much I love this feeling of being able to connect with other people. And certainly it seems like we have something here with this group, with this instructional design community. And certainly this podcast has been a focus on many of these conversations. All of these things goes back to the point that I was making a couple moments ago, that relationships are everything in our world. And it's not just through my observations that I was able to base this type of claim around this. What if there was a study, a lifelong study, to measure how to live a happy and fulfilling life? Would these researchers come to the same type of conclusion? So here's the thing. Maybe you know about this study. Maybe you don't. I learned about it this year and was like, ooh, that is incredible. In 1938, during the Great Depression, Harvard researchers began to study 238 Harvard sophomores. The goal of a study was to reveal what leads to a happy and healthy life. The study went on for 75 years with collecting and analyzing information, and it became a part of a Harvard study of adult development. as time went on, additional groups were brought into the study. They wanted to be able to essentially think more about the inner city kids as well, not just from Harvard, but then also to be able to think more about other participants with thinking about their wives, their children, grandchildren, and really being able to bring in more and more people, connecting all of the dots. And eventually, the study ballooned to about 1,300 people. And surprisingly, this is the biggest thing, the research continued. It didn't stop. Can you imagine carrying on a project for 75 years? I mean, think about how many things can go wrong with falling through the cracks, whether from people quitting, retiring, funding being an issue, anything of a sort. And somehow the ball was never dropped for this study. Now, not only did the researchers be able to do the information gathering, which you would think about from interviews and surveys and such, but they even dove into drawing blood with the medical records and doing more from this type of mentality too. So not just from the physical, but from the mental state with thinking about with happiness and living a fulfilling life. So with 75 years of access to these same people, what did they actually find out? Well, Dr. Robert Waldinger, the director of a study, and he is now the fourth director of this study, by the way, he recorded his main points in an amazing TED Talk that I'm going to link to inside of the show notes. You should absolutely watch it. Fascinating video. But to summarize his points, there were three main takeaways from the study that all revolved around living a happier and healthier life. And these three were that, number one, social connections are key and that loneliness kills. Number two, it is the quality of relationships over quantity. And then number three, good relationships don't just protect the body, but they protect the brain. They protect the mind. And those who did actually form these amazing relationships, they were sharper. They had stronger memories. They were able to recall more. So overall, amazing relationships tie directly into a lifetime of happiness. Why am I bringing this up on this podcast after 100 episodes? Well, my main takeaway is that I keep on recording podcast episodes because it keeps me connected with all of you. Relationships are everything. They give life meaning, which is why I love this show. Connecting with you, the Learning Nerds, has been so incredible. It's been so much fun. It's truly been so amazing. And to think that there would be people all over the world who also considers themselves learning nerds is something that I would have never, ever expected before going down this podcast journey. And of course, the relationships that I've made from talking into this microphone are the ones that I could have never imagined as well. Even though the guests may not know you personally, they sure do end up meeting you. Every guest at the end of the episodes, they always say something along the lines of how to contact them. And usually they say something along the lines of how they would love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to them via email or LinkedIn or whatever it is. Now, here's the awesome thing. A considerable amount of you follow up on this. You take advantage of someone saying, hey, you can network with me. And then you reach out to these people. And usually you ask questions, but you also send your appreciation for them sharing their knowledge on this show. So I always hear back from these guests like clockwork about how I have the best audience ever and that they were blown away by the kindness of the Learning Nerd community and hearing from all of you and saying all these amazing things about their talk. And they're just so grateful that they were able to connect with all of you. So for all of those reasons, I say thank you. Whether it's by bringing me into your home, your car ride into the grocery store, walking your dog, going to work, whatever it is, I deeply appreciate your time. I know that there are many different options to be able to listen to your instructional design needs, and certainly more podcasts keep on coming about every single day. But the numbers have never wavered. They have always consistently been the same or have gone up since then. So, of course, I just deeply appreciate all of you. So, hey, folks, make a new connection today. That's certainly the lesson from this podcast episode. And you know what? Here's to 100 more episodes. Can't wait to serve you and the instructional design community more as we keep on going down this journey together. And that, folks, is all I have for you. Be sure, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet already. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And of course, give the show a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. Once again, if you want to nerd out with us, applications for Instructional Design Institute for the 5th cohort is now open. Please feel free to apply. Go down into the side of the show notes, and you can find more information about everything over there. And that is all I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next time.